Alright, we are doing this. If you haven't met before, I'm Nick. I'm an art major. I like to paint, all that kind of stuff. Wanted to take the time and do a painting for everybody. This isn't something I typically do, but I thought it would be nice to teach you guys how to paint digitally, because I know everyone in the school has an iPad. So sit back, relax. You don't have to even follow along. You can just watch if you want. Follow along, paint along, whatever you want. And just go from there. So, I hope you guys enjoy. Alright, so for this demo, I'm using ProCreate. What I'm doing right now is I'm laying in the sky, just putting in, and now what you'll see I'm doing is just putting in the rough shape of the mountains, but as you see, I go back in and out and erase a lot. You'll see that a lot throughout this video. Very important note before I go any further and potentially forget, layers. Layers are your best friend. Any drawing app, you want to use as many layers as possible, or that the app will permit you to use, because it makes your life so much easier if you want to maybe change something in the background or only change something in the foreground. Alright, so here's the part where I keep redrawing the highlights on the mountain. It took me a while to figure out a brush that I really liked. You'll see me draw and erase for about a minute here, so enjoy. Alright, little editor's note here. The great thing about ProCreate is there is a tool called the select tool, and how you access that is going into one of your layers, whatever layer you're working on, and you click it, and there's a button that says select. You hit that, and essentially what it is it allows you to color inside the lines, is what I call it, because you can't really draw outside of anything in that layer, which is really helpful if you want to like clean up some edges. Alright, you're starting to see me jump around a lot from mountain to mountain to foreground to background. Really, what I'm really doing is just kind of almost like a thumbnail sketch of what I want my entire landscape to look like. So now, as you see, I'm still attempting the highlights of this mountain. You'll see my frustration throughout the video, but yeah. So I made a little mistake. So when mountains are in the background, towards the bottom of the mountain there's always a layer of mist, and so I thought to best replicate that was to smudge my layer down, but what that did is that it left me less space to work with, and there's a much better solution than just erasing the bottom half of your mountain, and I'll get into that later. So finally, I come to a point where I'm happy with some of my highlights, and I just keep it, because I couldn't just keep erasing them. But you almost train your mind to look at things how they are and not how they're going to be later. So don't necessarily worry about how your drawing looks now, because if you don't like it, you can always paint over it. Alright, don't worry, I didn't erase that, I just hid it from my layer selection so I can get a better understanding of the mountain. By doing that, it kind of allows you to focus in on certain aspects. It also makes part of your drawing look really weird. You'll see I just brought the layer back, but really, layers are your friend. I don't even know why I did this, because I literally changed it like within a minute, but I made the sky, you don't have to worry about this, but I made the sky a little less desaturated, which I kind of shot myself in the foot because I didn't like how it turned out, so I had to go back and pretty much redo the sky. So whatever you want to do, whatever you think looks better, but personally I like the more desaturated sky. Should probably talk about brushes. For when I put in a highlight or I put in a shape that is supposed to represent my shadow, usually I'll just use a pencil, like the pencil tool. Any pencil tool will work. For a nice texture, under the charcoal selection in ProCreate, there is a brush at the very bottom. I think it's called like tree bark or something, or burnt tree. I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head. I should, but I don't. But those are some brushes I recommend. Honestly, whatever is your preference. If you want to use airbrush, use an airbrush. Maybe you're not even using ProCreate. Maybe you're not even using your iPad. Whatever works best for you. Another important thing that you might see me doing is using the smudge tool. Oh, I don't know why the mountain just disappeared. But another important thing that I use is the smudge tool. In ProCreate, it's like, kind of looks like a pointer finger. I know other drawing apps has that tool. It's been a while since I've used other drawing apps, but if possible, use ProCreate, man. It's it's so nice. But yeah, even if you don't have a drawing app that has a smudge tool, or maybe you're even painting or just drawing this physically, really gradients would be your best bet there. There are ways, but you also don't want to blend too much, because then you make everything look everything kind of blends into each other, and then there's no definition of what is your shadow and what is your highlight. So use your smudge tool, or blending, as we'll call it, that very sparingly. If you want your painting to have a painterly feel, then you shouldn't rely on blending. You should rely on layers of color or layers of value. Alright, so I'm doing a couple things to this mountain in the far background. For one, I'm putting a layer of mist. The brush that typically works best for that is any kind of soft airbrush. What I'm also doing is just changing its hue a little bit and lowering its opacity. Last thing I do, in ProCreate, there is a tool that allows you to kind of blur out an image, and since this mountain is in the far background, it wouldn't be as sharp as something would be in the foreground. So I believe it's called the magic wand tool. Again, I should probably know these things, but I don't. I just go off of the symbols. But it's in the top left corner. It is right next to the, I want to say, the settings icon, and there is a thing, or there's an option that says blur, and don't use a lot, because then it'll just melt away. But the blur tool is very helpful for stuff like that. Alright, so I finally found a rhythm to creating the highlights and the shadows of a mountain, so I'm not constantly erasing, drawing, and then erasing. I can't say I stopped that entirely, but you'll see it's not as bad. I decided to put a little mountain in between the one in the background and the one in the foreground, just to give a little more depth to my painting, or digital painting. Another little tip, if you see any of my colors just change just at all, it's because I'm using a tool that is also found in what I call the magic wand. So it's at the very bottom. It's called hue, or hue change. Again, I should know these things, but I don't. What that allows you to do is change the hue or change the color of your midtone, shadow, and your highlight of a specific layer. So typically when I'm done, say, one mountain, I'll combine all my layers into one to make one mountain layer, like one layer of that mountain. And then what I'll do is then I'll go into the hue, and I'll change any colors that look off. So if I want my midtones to be a bit cooler, or be a bit warmer, I'll add a little more red and yellow. If I want them to be a little more cooler, I'll add more blue. So I want this mountain closer to the foreground to be a little warmer, so that's why there's a dramatic, not dramatic, but a slight change in hue. It's more red, more warm. Also, this layer of mountain, or whatever, this mountain layer was the death of me. You'll see why. If you thought the mountain in the background was bad, oh boy, you're in for a treat. A big struggle for me for this painting was kind of differentiating the mountain in the foreground to the mountain that's in between that and the mountain between it. Count how many times I said mountain in this video, oh my god. But yeah. I tried combining those two mountains. You'll see why. I didn't like it, so I not erased it, but I had to redo the entire thing. If you ever want to experiment like that, I recommend duplicating that layer. That way you don't have to if you don't like it, it's the old layer is there, and you don't have to redo it like I did. And again, if you don't like how you put down a layer, or maybe for this instance, I didn't like how kind of all meshed together my gradients look, you can just always paint or draw over it. It really doesn't matter. If anything, that kind of emphasizes your painting more as a painting when you have layers of paint on top of one another. I don't know. Personally, I really like paintings that have a painterly feel to them. I like paintings that you can see the brush strokes, so that's something I wanted to capture. If you, again, I've said this a lot, but if you blend, you lose that feeling a lot, and it stinks. Alright, now you can see what I mean when I tried combining those two mountains. I could have had some success with it, but I feel like the main problem is these mountains in the foreground are primarily warm. And that one mountain I tried to combine it with is very cool. It has very cool tones. So when you have these two mountains and you're going to combine them, you really need to readjust your color palette, which it was just not worth all of that, because then I would have to reconstruct that entire section of my landscape, and I could have risked just, yeah, there's a lot that could have gone wrong. Alright, I hope my use of the Wii shop channel music isn't just completely engulfing you guys in rage. So right now I'm just working in the middle of the mountain, and as you see, I try blending the two mountain layers together. Doesn't work, is not successful. So we move on anyway. It doesn't matter. You could always undo, you could always paint over it. The middle of the of this like particular mountain is much less rough. There's a lot more hills. There's a lot more land. So luckily, I didn't have to worry about going in and out and in and out. But if I really wanted to kind of add some roughness, what always helps doing is getting a nice textured brush and making it of a darker tone, and then putting it on top, and because that really adds a lot of volume to your drawing. Alright, biggest time saver. If you know you're going to be painting over something, I wouldn't stress too much about worrying about all of the details. You're gonna see me attempting to paint a little happy little tree, but then that's another thing I just had an absurd amount of trouble with is trees. I'm like, you know what? I'll go back to that later. So right now I'm putting in my land. My grass terrain. This is also, I didn't have much trouble with it, but this is probably another part of my favorite because one, I hated I hated those mountains, man. If only you knew my struggle. Well, I guess you do because you watched the video, but drawing this more like hill grassy terrain, it's much more calm, much more manageable than a mountain that has so many edges, so many sharp corners. I also start with the water, and I looked at it, and it was very flat, so I go back later and add some reflections, so when I get there, I will tell you how I did that. Alright, you're now witnessing Nick's ever-long struggle to paint trees. It took me a couple attempts, but this is what I was talking about, the reflections in the water. So this is just, well, for when I started experimenting, and then I'll go back to the trees, maybe I can do that. Yeah, I didn't like how the trees came out, so I went back to the water. So I went from the water to the trees, back to the water, and then to the trees. Right, so I kind of gave up on the trees for a little bit because I didn't want to not waste, but get tunnel vision and spend all of my time painting and then erasing trees. So for my own sanity, I started on the reflections of the water, which honestly is very easy and very fun to do. It really adds a lot of weight to your painting. So what I've done is I've taken my my layer of terrain, and then I duplicated it, and then I flipped it vertically, and so then I lowered its opacity a little bit, and I did that for both hills, and then I did it for the peak of the mountain, which you can kind of see, and then I added some little ripples in the water, especially towards the corner. Right, last thing I do here, finally found a rhythm for the trees. When by rhythm, I mean just make one, adjust it a little bit, and just copy it as many times. Maybe blend out the bottom to make sure it doesn't look like it's stacked on, but yeah, that's the finished painting. So you made it to the end of the video. Just wanted to say thank you a lot for watching. It means a lot. I didn't put the wig back on because it itches a lot, but hopefully if you guys enjoy this type of stuff, I'll do more of it. I hope you learned. Hope you had fun. That's the most important thing. Gives you something to do. See you later.